Fans, welcome back for Working Fans Music Cast, episode 3. And today we have a band that I'm very excited to bring on when the deadbolt breaks. I'm so excited to bring this band in. We have Aaron, Rob, and Charlie from When the Deadbolt Breaks. Let's get into some of your albums. First up, we got In the Ruins, No Light Shall Shine on Spare Change Records. Aaron, what can you tell us about this?
Well, so that was the first one we did. I had just left the band Cable. I was playing with them for a couple of years and decided to split ways. And I just there was a Color the Sun was a song that I had written quite a few years prior to that, and I tried to bring it in different bands that I was in, and nobody wanted to do it because it was too slow and just a very different sounding song for the time period, you know. So after leaving Cable, I had my own recording studio, and I was like, you know what, I had this idea. I just wanted to do slower, heavier sounding music, you know. And I went to school with a kid who played drums, kid Eric Wagner, and he was huge into the Ramones. That was like his top band. He's a big punk kid, and we started talking. I was like, you know, I have this idea. I want to start writing, recording some stuff, and see what we could do with it. So he's like, all right. So he came over and we started working on it. And it was kind of out of his wheelhouse because he was really into like the 16th notes and, you know, the whole Ramones thing. But as things started kind of coming together, I started looking for a PA system and had sent an email to this guy on Craigslist because he had a like PA speakers for $50 or whatever, big old PV speakers. So I messaged him, and his response had that Spare Change logo at the bottom. It was like, oh shit. So I was like, hey, I'm in a band, you know. So I sent him the couple MP3s that we had, and about 45 minutes to an hour later, we had an offer. He said, hey, you know, I'll sign you guys, but this is what I'll offer. And he gave it to us. And I was like, all right. That's kind of where the whole thing began, you know. And that album was the beginning of everything, really.
Wow. Now, the song I chose was Night on Bald Mountain. Anything in particular about the song?
It was heavily influenced by Abdul El Hazred from the Necronomicon. I remember I was reading it a lot at that point, and I just liked that imagery of him running down the mountain with those, you know, people or the demons in robes chasing after him, that type of thing. That's kind of where that song evolved from, was kind of based off that whole thing.
Nice. Now here is Night on Bald Mountain. All right, the next album coming up is a split with Negative Reaction. This is on Spare Change Records and PsycheDoomelic Records.
Yeah.
Now, how did the split release come about? And I noticed some of these songs were almost longer versions of a couple songs off the first one.
Yeah, we re-recorded some of those songs because we had a different lineup by that point. A new drummer, this guy Mike was on drums, and we just wanted to do better versions, because by this point we'd been playing for a couple of years. We had a better idea of what we were doing, right? At least we had some idea of what we're doing. So Spare Change Records, I think Roman Garbacek from Spare Change was playing with us at the time, and he's like, yeah, we could put it out. He's like, but let's see if we could try and get broader distribution, because I think he was working on signing a deal for distribution through Country Media at that point, and because of Negative Reaction, because at the time they were, getting a lot of traction, they were pretty big around the area. We got in touch with PsycheDoomelic, which is based out of Hungary, and we made an arrangement with them where they would handle all the European distribution, and we would handle everything else. Spirit Change Records would handle, the States, and it worked out pretty well. And that was kind of our intro into, getting more European fans, or European fans in general, because they started selling a CD and they ended up selling out of it in like no time. And I'm sure it's because of the Negative Reaction name at that point, but it helped us out quite a bit, kind of getting ourselves out there. So
nice. Now, the song I chose was Somewhere Between Murder and a Wet Dream. I think this was slightly longer than the version on the first one, and for some reason I just gravitated towards this one. That was a really good song. And I think we at the time I had this a guy that was singing with us. His name was Jeremy Gish, and he had written the lyrics for that one. And I remember actually the drummer Mike had written the first riff that comes in, and we just kind of started working with it based off that. But that's a really good song. Haven't listened to that in years. Nice. Here is Somewhere Between Murder and a Wet Dream. All right, next album up is The Last Day of the Sun. This one came out in 2010. What can you tell us about this album? I like the grittiness on these first 3 albums.
Yeah, they're very dirty. That's
Yeah.
partly because I'm, poor at recording things at that point, and still am probably, but
No,
um,
you kind of like refine your process as time goes on, but I
yeah.
always love those older kind of dirtier records when they clean up their sound eventually, because it's just something about those first ones. It gives it a vibe, like old Sepultura
Oh
almost.
yeah. Yeah, it's definitely more raw. And like I said, a lot of it I lent to the fact that I didn't really know what I was doing. Didn't really have great equipment. I mean, I had decent stuff, and at the time I guess it was good, but you make do with what you got. That so with this record, we had the idea of doing a double disc. Again, I think it was a brand new lineup by this point. Had a bunch of songs written, and um, we weren't really getting any traction from any labels. And even Spare Change Records at the time, even though Roman was in the band, he was like, yeah, he started feeling kind of weird about putting the records out of the band that he was in.
Yeah.
So we had talked about it, and it really wasn't going. The conversation wasn't going very well. So I was like, you know what, fuck it. Just at that point, like a lot of those blogs were getting popular, where they just post bands albums for free, basically, which
Yeah.
still happens constantly. But so I was like, you know what, let's just send it out ourselves. So we created the Fuzztown Records moniker and emailed it, literally, like the drummer and I spent weeks just emailing it to every single blog spot we could find online and said, here, post this for free, let people have at it, whatever. And at the time it was like, well, it kind of, we were kind of upset about it because we would have preferred to have somebody behind us now pushing it and help promote it properly. But at the same time, now that I look back at it, by doing that and giving it away for free, especially as a double disc, I mean, it helped even further kind of push us into different audiences, and all the blog spots were just posting it like crazy. So, in hindsight, it was actually probably a good thing to do, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like a good method of getting it out there. At least you're getting it out to as many places as possible.
Right. And the recording process doesn't cost us anything. We own the stuff, so it's technically free. It's just our time.
Yep. Now, the song I picked was Just Before Twilight. Anything you can tell us about it in particular?
Yeah. I love that song. Like, so that song is a pretty emotional song for me. Like, I was going through some rough shit when I written that. And the way the song came out, especially with the female vocals in the very beginning of it, is my drummer's, or was my drummer's, I think she was 15-year-old sister at the time. And they were both like, so my drummer was a born again Christian, and she was in the church choir, which is where she got to learn how to sing so well. And he's like, oh, my sister might be able to do some vocals on it. So he brings her over to the studio, and we didn't really have anything planned. I was like, well, what, he's like, oh, she's got some stuff in mind. So we set up the mic and let her go at it. And it came out sounding phenomenal. Just the way her harmonies were in the very beginning there, it just like adds a whole creepy but kind of beautiful vibe to it. So that song's always got a soft spot in my heart.
Yeah, here is Just Before Twilight. next album up, Drifting Towards the Edge of the Earth on EarOne Productions 2014. Starting to kind of refine the sound a little bit more on this record, you think?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely kind of figuring out more what we were doing, and again, brand new drummer for that record. Um, we had gotten an offer to go on tour with Elder, like before Elder really blew up. It was literally right before they really blew up. So we were doing 8 dates with them. They were actually doing the tour of the entire country. We could only fit in 8 dates, so we went down south and did the eight different shows with them. But right before we left, the drummer and I, Rich, we were like, you know what, we got to start writing a new record. Let's just see what happens. We figured we would just take a weekend, get a whole lot of red wine, and just drink as much as we could and write shit and record it simultaneously and see what happens. And that's what happened with the record. That's what came out of it. So we finished all the basic tracks, the drums and the scratch guitar tracks right before we left. It took 3 days to do it. And then when I got back, I started doing all the overdubs and trying to fit everything together and trying to piece it together. It took about a year to finish, but yeah, it was a really good record.
Nice. Now, the song I chose was California Comes the Rain. Any stories in particular stand out about this one?
We actually still do that one live now. It's one of the ones that we brought back into our repertoire. So I don't know if anybody wants to say anything about that.
Yeah, it's a good way to close the set.
Nice. I was going to ask you guys, from these first few records, what are the songs you guys like playing off of them?
Well, I like mixing in some of the older, heavier stuff. There was Glass Eye, Ingrate, California. You know, that's a great one to play too. We really build it up pretty good at the end. Throw in a lot of interesting different tempos and drum parts, and just try to make it as big and epic as we can.
It's a really dynamic song, you know, and it's interesting because playing it so many times throughout the years, you know, with different lineups, every time it comes out sounding a little bit different, you know, but I think the way we play it, it's more true to the original now, but it's almost more powerful. Like if I had the choice, I'd probably re-record that song now with this lineup, you know. It's definitely got a lot of power behind it.
Nice. Charlie, are there any songs in particular that you enjoy playing that stand out?
Going before my time in the band, one song that's in the set is Fistful of Flowers. And that's probably my favorite. I really like playing that one. It's not one of the faster ones, but it's just got that slow, doomy chug to it, you know. I think that's probably my favorite to play.
Yeah,
nice.
I really like playing that one too.
Well, here is California Comes the Rain. Now, the next album up, this is about when I started becoming familiar with the band Until It All Collides on Salt of the Earth Records 2016. That song, this is when I really started getting into it because I would listen to the song it would become almost like background noise for me. And then the riff would hit again, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, I got into those long form songs.
Yeah.
Now, what can you tell us about this EP? It had the one song and then the 2 live tracks, right?
Yeah. So Until It All Collides, that was another one that, I had just finished going through a rough patch, going through divorce and all that shit. And that's kind of what really spawned that song for me, is I needed something. I mean, music is an outlet, no matter how you look at it. It's an outlet for like happiness or sadness or violence or whatever it is, and I've always used it as that. And that song really encompasses just the morbid, dark spot that I was in at the time, especially that whole ending where it just starts building up and, all the noise kind of comes in, because that was all the shit that was going on in my head at the time, but yeah, we haven't played that in a while, but playing it live is a trick, but it's a lot of fun too.
Yeah, I gotta imagine with like a 20+ minute song.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, that's the song I chose, Until It All Collides. Here it is.
stones are cast aside for a brief moment in time. Everything will stop and I'll be fine. Kings and queens divide, only particles remain. Fail not to believe, the doorways only close when I'm on fire.
Now the follow-up to that project, Angels Are Weeping, God Has Abandoned, that was on Desert Record or Sliptrick Records 2016. It came out in a purple vinyl on Desert Records 2019, which is available at whenthedeadboltbreaks.bandcamp.com.
Yeah.
Now, what can you tell us about this record?
So I did a stint in Earthride playing bass. I went on tour with them for about a month out west, and we were scheduled. We went on tour with it was Earthride and the Skull and Hyborian, and we were scheduled to play. We were getting towards the end of the tour. We were scheduled to play in San Diego, and for some reason, Skull wanted to do the San Diego show, but Earthride didn't. So I was just along for the ride. I was kind of a hired gun. So they were like, you know what? We got a buddy in New Mexico who's putting on a show at the launch pad. Let's go down there and do that. So I was like, all right, cool. I'm all along for the ride, so whatever. So we get down there and we played with the band Red Mesa, which is based out of New Mexico, and the launch pad is kind of their home territory. And at that point, we had already had the deal in place with Sliptrick to do the CDs, which ended up being, it's a whole different story, but so I was talking to Brad and I was like, I really want to put this record out on vinyl, because I knew he had a label, and I was like, do you mind if I send it to you? He's like, oh yeah, sure, send it to me. So I sent him the MP3s, and he fell in love with it and offered to put the vinyl out. And that was really, I guess at the time when he first built Desert Records, it was more just to put out his band, like to for an outlet for his own band. He never really thought about putting out any other bands, but then when he heard Angels Are Weeping, he fell in love with it so much that he's like, he started talking to other people that ran labels, and they were like, if you're going to put something out, put it out because you love it, not because you feel like you have to. So he offered and put it out. But it's a good record. It's got a lot of, I think, again, you can really see the progression of things kind of happening by that point.
Yeah. Now, there's been a lot of lineup changes in the band. Rob, Charlie, which albums did you come in on that were your first ones to do?
Well, we both came in on this last one, as Hope Valley Burns.
Nice. Now, were you guys fans coming into this, or was this something totally new to you?
Well, we've known Aaron for a while. We were in a project together called Sentinel Hill, and we've all played in the same circle for a while. We also had a project called Vatican Fire, and that's Vatican Fire is kind of what led us into When the Deadbolt Breaks. We had Aaron and I had written a handful of songs, and Deadbolt was kind of going through some lineup changes, and the music style of Vatican Fire and When the Deadbolt Breaks are kind of complementary, and so Aaron kind of invited us into Deadbolt.
Nice.
Yeah, I there's a lot of metal shows in Eastern Connecticut, and I'm usually the guy that makes the flyers. And I remember being sent the direction to make a flyer with the Deadbolt logo on it, and I didn't know who Deadbolt was, and I didn't know Aaron. And their logo was so hard to put on this flyer because it was like I had to erase all this stuff, and I had to take the background out. I was like, man, these guys are probably a pain in the ass in real life. Like their logo is so annoying to work with, and I got annoyed with them. And then when the show came around and they went on, my jaw dropped because it's so viscerally different than everything. The lights go out, it gets really dark, it's super loud, super heavy. And at that moment I was like, man, this is something else. And of course that was years before Rob and I were in the band, but my very first show, seeing them just out of the gate, I realized there was just a big difference between anything else that was going on. And I was definitely intrigued, never thinking that I would have a place in the band. And then when it happened, when the opening was there, I sort of jumped at it because, like I said, it impressed me right out of the gate. Not the logo. The logo annoyed me, but the music was the music got me. And not just the music. Like, Joe, have you seen Deadbolt live before?
I have not. I've been a huge fan. every time a show comes up, something else is happening that day, and I'm always so mad. I was planning on going to the early Jewett City show this year.
Yeah, it's definitely it's not. It's just different than a band setting their stuff up and playing. Like there's a whole visual element to it, and it's very dark, and it just conjures these. And this is me speaking as a fan, because I think I've seen Deadbolt way more times than I've ever been on stage with them. So I still kind of see myself as more like an outside guy, but there's a whole atmosphere to it that's just different. That it's almost oppressive. And Aaron will tell you, and this is one of the things I really like about Deadbolt is that a good percentage of the room will leave during the first Deadbolt song.
Wow.
Like a certain amount of people will leave the room because they just can't take it for whatever reason. And it's not even because it's so loud. I just think it's dark and it's oppressive and it just conjures feelings in people that they're uncomfortable with. And, every other band is trying to get everyone into the room to watch them. And Aaron's thought process would be like, if it's not for them, it's not for them. And if there's two people left, then that's who we're playing for, and I always like that. To me, that makes it art and not popularity contest or monetary success or anything like that. It's just this expression more than anything else. So long story long, that I say that's kind of what caught me originally.
Like I've seen videos of the shows and that's exactly what I thought. I'm like, oh, this is art at a different level. Like imagine if I could take these riffs that I like listening to in my headphones, see it live with like a light going, whatever's going on the screen. That's why I've been dying to get to a show.
Well,
bring earplugs.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where like I've seen we've all seen a ton of bands live. You go to concerts or whatever. Like, and I remember seeing A Perfect Circle live. Like I went because Meshuggah opened up, and I had to see Meshuggah again. It's one of my favorite bands at the time, and A Perfect Circle bored the living daylights out of me, man. Like they sounded so good. I mean, they sounded perfect, exactly like the CD, but there was no stage performance at all. Like everybody stood there, and it was boring as fuck. And I'm like, why would you pay this kind of money to see a band live? To just watch them do stuff and not really have a show,
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, having a show to go see and having it be different than the records or the CD is important because that's what you're paying for. You're paying somebody to be entertained, right? And at the same time, it's an outlet of everything. It's an outlet of aggression. It's an outlet of the darkness and whatever. I mean, so I want it to be that. I don't know if that makes sense, but I mean, so yes, I mean, it's just, you just turn it up, get that rumble going, shut the lights off, get the visuals going and just get sucked into it, and you end up like, I end up kind of becoming a different person at that point because I just get involved in it, and it's to a point where I miss riffs or I miss things because I just get so sucked into what I'm doing. And that feel and that thump and that, like, just that pulse that's going at the time, you just get lost in it, But I think it's, like I said, I think it's important as a show goer to have that experience, but it's not for everybody and that's cool.
Yeah. Now the song I picked from this album is Centering Through Isolation. This was the first album that I was able to anticipate from the band, like knowing it was coming out, waiting for the release day, getting it that morning on when the Deadbolt Breaks.bandcamp.com, and then just hearing that first song and being like, yes.
Yeah, I mean, the song, it was literally based off of watching like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like the old 70s horror movies where, like, it's the graphics weren't really there, so it's just dark. And it's so dark, but shit's happening behind it where you can't see what's going on. And you could just imagine, like, being chased in the woods by a psycho in the middle of the night and it's like pitch black out and, your heart rate's going and you don't know what the fuck is going on. You don't know who's behind you or where they are. And you just, that pulsing bass sound that they have in the, for the soundtrack of the movies, that whole emotion is what that song was. That's kind of where it was born from.
Nice. Now, guys, here's Centering Through Isolation.
tattooed on woods, so quiet, raised with innocence, it's blinding. Swirling colors rain dies on the skin. It's Sliptrick.
All right. The next album up was the Until It All Collides, the Nightmare versions on Desert Records. This came out in 2020. I was excited for this because I liked Until It All Collides. So anytime I hear of like a remix album or almost like a reimagining, I'm like, I'm into that idea.
Yeah, it was, it kind of came at a point where, like Rob said, we were kind of looking at lineup changes that were almost imminent, at that point. But I felt like we needed to put something out because it had been a while, and I wanted to kind of keep things out. So Steve, our keyboard player, who's not with us tonight, he had done a remix of Floyd's Machine, which is off the Angels record. Like he just decided to take it and like added his own things to it, and it came out sounding like Godflesh remixed one of our songs. I was like, holy shit, this is something. But it was a couple of years ago and I had no idea what to do with it because it was just one song. And I'm like, I'm going to hold on to it because maybe at some point I'll give it away on Bandcamp or something, or we'll do a contest with it. I don't know. Something good's got to happen with it. I just sat on it, so, looking at the lineup changes and everything we were talking about, and I was like, I started thinking, I'm like, what if Steve just remixes whatever songs he wants from our records? Like, let him choose and make a record based off that, and so he went through our discography and picked the ones that he liked the best and went to town, and I was like, he's like, is there anything specific you're looking for? And I'm like, no, man, I trust you to, like, he's a genius. He's a musical genius, So I was like, just do what you're going to do because I know it's going to come out amazing, and then as we're going through that process, I had been listening to, I listen to Doors a lot. I like the Doors, and My Wild Love has always been a very interesting song to me because it's so bare minimal and so primal sounding because there's not a whole lot to it. And I always liked that, it's almost like listening to early Dark Throne where it's like bare minimum basic, just something,
Yeah.
So I told Steve, I'm like, I want to do a cover of this, but I'm not really sure how to fit that in. And I'm not really sure what to do with it. She's like, I got an idea. Like 20 minutes later, he calls me. He's like, hey, something like this. And he plays his version of the music. I'm like, yeah, that's perfect. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, the song I chose off of this was the Floyd's Machines remix. I like the original, but there's something about the remix that just hit me.
It sounds like monsters stomping through a city. Like it just, the way he did it, it just sounds so like, it's got that.
Yeah.
It's huge. Yeah.
Well, guys, here's the Floyd's Machines remix. right, the next album up, one of the newer records. So this is As Hope Valley Burns on Electric Talon Records 2021. How excited were you guys to put out this record and put out the idea of it as like a double record, but two released at the same general time?
Oh, very actually. I want, like, you know, I'm just gonna say something real quick about it. Like, so when Rob and Charlie got into the band, I was extremely excited, and I still am. You know, because I knew that, I mean, the two of them, you guys they're super talented. You know, and bringing Steve in, and I knew it would kind of push everything into a whole nother dimension. You know, so beginning the writing process on this, I was extremely excited, and I think it came out amazing. I don't know if you guys want to say anything about it, but
Yeah, I'm really happy with how it came out. It was never meant to be a double album. It was just, we just kept writing and writing and writing and writing. Before we knew it, we just had this collection of, you know, an hour or 20 minutes worth of music. I think it came out to,
yeah.
something in that ballpark. And yeah, and it ended up becoming two albums out of necessity.
And I can't speak to Aaron's process before these albums, and I know that he's been somewhat collaborative with previous members, but Aaron's definitely a guy that can just write an album by himself. It doesn't need anyone else. But getting Rob in the band and the way they both work together and were able to come up with something that I don't think that, you know, neither one of them could have done that just by themselves. It was the combination of the two, and they're very different types of players. So I think if, you know, somebody were to go through the discography of Deadbolt and listen to all of them, you're going to notice a pretty stark difference with these last two ones because of Rob's input and riff writing and stuff like that. It mixes well with Aaron's writing, but it's noticeably different. So it gives a different vibe.
Yeah, I was inspired by the older, heavier kind of Deadbolt era. I really like the Angels Are Weeping album. I thought it was a great album. And I liked, you know, the ambience and mixed in with the aggression, but I wanted to bring back a little more of the aggression, and I think that's probably the biggest thing I've noticed that's different about this album as opposed to some of the other stuff is the trippy ambient stuff. I feel like is more ambient, and the heavier stuff is heavier. It's just it's got a lot more contrast to it, I think.
Yeah, and it was interesting too. I mean, because this is, you know, the peak of the pandemic, basically, or like when it was first starting. I guess it was. So yeah, everybody's locked down in their homes, and to write the record, we were emailing shit back and forth. You know, like Rob and I would get together and, you know, do the drum tracks at his place. We would just write a bunch of riffs, you know, and he would, you know, after I left, he would put them together the way he felt they would fit. You know, and even some songs like he wrote, I mean, shit, like The Hanged Woman, you know, you wrote that on your own pretty much.
Yeah, that was a complete song I brought.
Yeah,
The
so
Hanged Woman and was it God's Eyes?
yeah, you know, and then so he would write the riffs and put the song together and send it to me, and I play completely different than he does. I'm very sloppy. I'm not very precise, you know, when I play. So, you know, hearing the song the way he had it, like it didn't sound like something that I would do. I was like, oh, I like it, but I can't play it like that because I'm not that good of a player, you know, and Rob's a great musician. So throwing my own spin on it, you know, then it becomes what it is, you know, and so it was a very different process than what we've done in the past, and it worked out so incredibly well, you know.
Yeah, and I really liked hearing my riffs played in the Deadbolt style, because like Aaron said, he and I have very different styles, so it's kind of cool to have that flavor added to something I wrote.
Nice. Now the song I chose is So Lost Are We from As Hope Valley Burns. Here it is.